Welcome back, legends. I hope you're all fantastic. We have the MXR Joshua Ambient Echo on the bench today. This combines 2 delays along with pitch shifting and reverb, and it crams it all into a standard MXR style enclosure. There's a lot more than meets the eye with this pedal because there are a lot of deep parameters that you can control on this. The 6 knobs that you're presented with to kind of provide all the surface level functions are your delay, time, and feedback, your subdivision selection, mix, voice, which is going to blend in the reverb and the pitch shifting, and then modulation. There's a button to engage the second echo. There's a button to engage or disengage delay trails when the pedal is bypassed. There's an output jack that supports stereo output. So if you've got a TRS to dual TS output, you can do that. That's how I'm using it. Then a control jack where you can add an expression pedal or external tap tempo. If you've only got mono cables, you can actually set that so it functions as the second channel output on there. So you can get stereo out of this without any special cables if you want. By pressing and holding these buttons here and then tweaking these knobs, you get access to a bunch of secondary functions. So we're going to hear this in stereo today. I'm going to give you a little jam just setting this up as a sweet lead delay. Then we're going to dive straight into some sounds, and things are going to get pretty wild on here. This does a lot more than I expected it to. Let's go. I love the combination of a quarter note and a dotted eighth note delay for just about any musical application, but I find a lot of the time other delay pedals will give you all these extra options that you don't really want, whereas with this, just cranking up the voice control, playing around with some of those different subdivisions on there, took me somewhere I did not expect. You can access some deeper parameters on here by kind of pressing and holding either the second delay button or the trails button over here. And my favorite one, especially if I want to dial in a dual lead delay, will kind of leave this subdivision setting where I had it. So I've got a combination of a quarter note and a dotted eighth note. We're going to press and hold the trails, and then we're going to use the voice control, and that's going to act as a low pass filter on there, or a high cut. So I can leave it wide open like I've got it, or as I crank this up, it's going to cut more and more of the high end out of my delay repeats, which just basically means I can crank up the feedback and the mix and wallow in those dark, glorious sounding delays. So let's just have a listen to where it is right now. Pretty sweet. The manual says if I do this and I crank this control to about halfway on there, you just got to remember to turn the voice control back down after you've held this button down. That should be a high cut at around 2 kilohertz. Let's hear it. So for my taste, I think I like it a little below noon. So again, we're going to turn this voice knob while I'm holding down the trails button over here. That's about noon, so that's about 2K. I normally like about a 3 or a 4K cut, which to my ears sounds somewhere around there. We'll turn that voice knob back down. So that's just one way you can use the built-in secondary features. In this case, just to sweeten up the delay tone with a big greasy lead guitar sound on there. To take this a bit further, you could try the next rhythmic subdivision. So it's kind of going to give you a quarter note and an eighth note on one side, basically like the Van Halen dual delay style setting on there. So I'm going to turn the repeats down a little bit. I'll leave the mix roughly where it is. I will introduce a little bit of modulation on this because I like the way that sounds. The secondary function for the modulation, you can actually adjust the depth that way. So I'll bring a little bit of modulation in, then I'll play with the depth. And in this case, just a tiny amount. So you can set that up for chorusing or flanging with the time just a little bit above the minimum on there. You can get those early King's X Thai Tabor style. Is it a reverb? Is it a delay? Is it a chorus kind of tone out of it, which I massively appreciate. The other thing being a big fan of 80s rack delays, especially the early DDL units where the analog feedback path was still in place. It wasn't all just happening in the digital realm. You'd often have to kind of like massage the signal coming into those primitive chips with compression and EQ, and then the opposite of compression, so expansion and EQ. So that whole circuit was often called a compander, and you can adjust the compander characteristics in here by, again, holding the trails button on here. I'm going to move this division setting over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to the minimum over here. We'll go to the dotted eighth note and quarter note combo on here. Just have a listen to like the quality of the echoes on here and the successive volume between each repeat as this decays. I'll set the mix on full. I'll give it plenty of regeneration. I'll leave the delay in the middle. Now I'm going to crank that all the way up on there, and then we will go back to our same rhythmic subdivision. I'll put these two clips side by side, but first this is with the compression max. Essentially with it all the way down at the bottom, you have quite a clean, dare I say, modern sounding digital delay. Cranking it up makes it sound that little bit crustier and lo-fi. I personally like having this set around 1 o'clock on here, and then with the settings that I've dialed in so far, you get this. One other feature that I really like that comes as the default on here is what they call symmetric regeneration on here. So the idea being that if you set up a quarter note delay on one side and a dotted eighth note on the other side, because one delay, in this case, the dotted eighth note, is a much shorter time between the echoes, it's going to need more regeneration or feedback on it to basically become inaudible at the same time as the quarter note. So by default, any subdivision that you set up will compensate for that with the feedback. As we've heard on here, all the echoes eventually kind of die out at the same rate on there, which is personally how I like to set these things up. On a lot of dual delays, you don't have that symmetric regeneration on there. You've kind of got to adjust the feedback on one and make it more than the other and listen to it. But I love that feature on there. You can disable it. Like I said on there, there's more secondary functions regarding things like the overall reverb, decay, and mix on there. I'm actually going to crank those up, and we'll go back to those settings that we heard at the start of the video on there. Then I'm going to connect an expression pedal and show you how you can morph between different settings. Another feature I really like is if you tweak too many of the advanced parameters and you want to reset them, you just press and hold both of these two soft buttons for about 5 seconds and you can totally reset the pedal, which is what I have done. I've now connected an expression pedal in here. So the way you can morph between settings, at the moment I have the expression pedal toe down. So I've just set up a pretty basic delay on here with the delay knob at around noon, regeneration at noon. I've got the quarter note subdivision on there. The mix I'm going to set at noon on there, no modulation or voice. Then if I kick the expression pedal to the heel down position, let's introduce some voice, some modulation, and say a different rhythmic subdivision, as well as more mix in here. Now I can morph between these settings just by adjusting the expression pedal. Have a listen to this. I'm going to start in the toe down position. There's so much more than I expected with this pedal, and it does live up to the ambient tag. You can use it as a very straightforward dual delay or rhythmic echo, but I think the magic in here is the way MXR have been able to keep such a simple layout but really cram so many sounds into this pedal, and it's a joy to use once you remember the secondary functions, which I've been playing around with the pedal for a few days, and I know that the voice, when I hold down the trails, is my high cut control. And similarly, if I do the same thing with the mod, that's my mod depth. They're the main ones I would want to tweak on there. It'd be really cool to see them expand on this and do a bigger version, which has presets and MIDI, because it's such an inspiring sounding pedal. That's the most important thing, that it sounds good. But hands-on in an MXR style box, you're kind of hard pressed to find a better pedal out there. I think this compares really well to the Boss SDE3, and this does some things that a pedal like the Strymon Dig, which is a lot more expensive, can't do. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the MXR Joshua. Let me know in the comments section below. Check the video description for ways to support my channel, and I'll play you all out with some more delicious dual echoes. Cheers.